Fabulous Designs takes you to the four corners of the planet to discover the world's most extraordinary homes. Whether an open savanna, on a deserted island, high in the mountains, in the city center, or even in the heart of a natural reserve, these out-of-the-ordinary properties fascinate for not only their originality, design, and story, but also for being at the forefront of ecology. Evoking wonder, inspiration, and surprise, meet those responsible for their conception and walk through the doors of these homes that you've always dreamed of visiting on a private tour that'll take your breath away. Welcome to the fabulous world of design. In this episode, Fabulous Designs is heading to Iceland to discover a hotel that contrasts modern style with the rugged environment that surrounds it. Then we'll travel to Tijuana, Mexico, to visit one local family's incredible ecological house. But first, we're off to Romania to knock on the door of an extraordinary family home. We're here in Romania, in the village of Buzău, situated between forests and volcanoes, in search of one of the only sustainable houses in the region. Originally from France, Elaine, her husband, and their 3 children moved to Romania 10 years ago. Wanting to escape the pollution and the hustle and bustle of Bucharest as often as possible, they set about building a second home, cut off from the rest of the world, about 2 hours away from the capital.
We were looking for a place where we could go away for the weekend that wasn't too far from Bucharest. We came across this hill and found it interesting because it was relatively isolated from the surrounding villages. There are 2 monasteries nearby, so culturally it was interesting too. So we picked out this region and later found a plot of ground in the area. As far as the construction of the house, well, we turned to ecological solutions basically because of how isolated we are here. It seemed natural to not just stick a cement building here that wouldn't blend in with the surroundings. And then there were also technical constraints, again, due to the remoteness. We figured that it would be more intelligent economically to become fully autonomous in as many ways possible.
In order for this project to be possible, Elaine surrounded herself with a team that was aware of environmental issues and able to advise her on the appropriate techniques and materials. Sergio Patria is one of the architects that worked on the project. He oversaw each step in the construction of this unique house.
On this project, the challenge was twofold. To start with, the client wanted to build something very different than what is usually done in Romania. Then, there was the terrain on which the house was to be built, which was very difficult to work with.
One of the main concerns for the owners was minimizing their impact on the site. Therefore, they decided to keep the natural curves of the land intact, creating the least amount of damage on the surrounding nature. This way, the architecture adapts to the site, not the other way around.
The owner's starting idea was to position the house at the very top of this hill in order to obtain the best possible view, while, at the same time, intervening as little as possible on the geometry of the terrain. So we had to come up with some solutions. Instead of opting for a rather classic linear construction, we decided to break the construction up into several zones. They are situated in such a way as to provide each of the 3 blocks with the best possible view. They adapt to the inclination of the terrain. to the ground curbs in the aim of smoothing out the varying differences in levels. Inside, the stairs create the link between the blocks.
Our idea was to build a log house. So if you're going for a log house, you're not going to use stuff made out of plastic in the place. The theme was logs. So to enhance the log construction, we surrounded it with other noble materials. That's what we did, and it worked just perfect.
Log construction is one of the oldest techniques when it comes to building with wood. However, employing this craft, which has been updated over the last few years, isn't always plain sailing.
We faced other challenges, especially the work concerning the log construction of the various walls. In fact, they were brought here directly from the forest to be worked on without having been seasoned beforehand. As a result, the logs would shrink in height over the first 5 years.
Wood is a living material, so over time it will change and lose some of its volume. In the first few years after installation, it will shrink by several dozen centimeters.
The system that was used is experimental. We had to calculate the shift in order to be able to adapt to structural changes taking place over time. You can see here how the logs have shifted. Eventually, they will stabilize and be more solid.
The logs were treated against insects, then coated with an ecological water-based paint. This process must be repeated during the first 3 years.
What is so pleasant about working with wood is its texture. One really creates a strong relationship with the material. You can touch it, feel its warmth, its coarseness. This is a tactile experience that you just don't get with materials used in modern construction, like brick and cement.
Building a home using only natural materials was the guiding principle of the project. With a low carbon footprint and their ability to blend into the landscape, the log construction met the owner's expectations to a T. Simona Rizzi is an interior designer. This passionate Italian designed some of the house's key elements, like the stairs and chimney, and helped Elaine in selecting materials.
The main guideline for the design was living in the country, and to give the house a form of transparency in relationship to the exterior. So everything had to be natural, but practical as well.
This is the first time Simona has returned to the house since it was built, so she's able to see how it has evolved, a perfect mix between authenticity and modernity.
So when I got here today, after about 5 years since last seeing the house, I was very, very, very happy to see all these natural materials that had been treated with natural products. They've aged beautifully. I see today that after 5 years of oxidation, of being touched by human hands, the aging process is fantastic. In the end, building a house like this, where the main structure is wood, was free of constraints. I could pretty much do as I pleased. I was free. The only thing that I had to keep in mind was the shrinking of the wood, a very important factor, given the number of doorways, and so technically, I had to allow for all eventual shifts and shrinkage of wood so that everything would remain proportional over the time.
Here we experimented with another technique. We used raw wood to panel the chimney. The idea was to create a kind of wooden grating placed a few centimeters away from the surface of the chimney. We gave it a basic coat of paint underneath, and then we mounted these slats of wood of varying thickness. As I said, the wood is raw and untreated for a couple of reasons. One is aesthetic, I rather like the way this looks, and the other is to avoid toxic fumes that it might give off when heated. Seeing as though it's a bedroom, that wouldn't be such a good idea. Another concern about the house was to come up with appropriate decorations, nothing that you could just buy in a shop, but using recovered or recycled materials, things from right here. So we built this closet using chicken wire, like the kind you use on the farm, and wood we found on the grounds. And with leftover pieces of log, seeing as though they're pretty big, we made bedside lamps. Our most recent creations are these things here, like this table made with a trunk that was on top of the wood pile. And it turned out just fine.
Another key material used on the house is stone. It can be seen on the two exterior towers that surround the main building and on the interior walls.
These stones, set in the French style, so to speak, using the dry stone technique, well, these stones come from Francis, from the Maurienne Valley. The technique was used by French workers that came here to teach the Romanian workers the method. There was an exchange, because in fact, this way of setting stones where you use a mortar on just 2/3 of the stone surface is not a technique used in Romania at all. Building an ecological house in Romania, well, there is no real history in their culture of that kind of construction, and not much experience in the field, which meant that the suppliers were much more difficult to find than if we had just opted for cement construction. You know, boom, boom, done. But we did have the fortune of working with an architect who was young and very interested in the project, and who did a lot of research on his own initiative, and who found suppliers who were able to furnish materials, technical solutions, and so on. So we were also obliged to call upon the services of French suppliers who contributed their know-how. Being expatriates, we don't really have a family home in France. The idea behind this house was also to create a point of reference for the family. I also think that it's healthy for a family nucleus to be able to come together in a place where everyone can do his or her thing, but still be together, rather than in the city where everyone tends to go off on their own over the weekend. Each time we come here, we rediscover the house. It's a joy to live in the house, and at the same time, our awareness is directed outside. Every time, it's like falling in love with the house again, and with this opening onto nature.
Elaine and Ludovic's house has become a benchmark for sustainable construction in Romania. Constructing it has also provided the opportunity to educate local builders and pass on new, more environmentally friendly techniques to them. Its cost remains very high, making it inaccessible to the vast majority of Romanians. But the project shows that it is possible to build with natural materials in a country that has become accustomed to concrete. Our next stop is Iceland, in the very north of Europe, to pay a visit to a hotel whose ultra-contemporary design blends perfectly with the surrounding wilderness. With immaculate and wild expanses of nature that extend as far as the eye can see, Iceland is known for being one of the greenest countries in the world. Bursting with volcanic and geothermal activity, the island also benefits from an endless supply of renewable energies. Thingvellir National Park, classified by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, is one of the country's natural jewels. It's in this pristine setting, less than an hour away from the Icelandic capital of Reykjavik, that we find a project that is one of a kind for the country.
To build a hotel in the middle of nature, you must have a responsible attitude. Last year, for example, the hotel alone received nearly 18,000 tourists in this area. That is a very heavy burden for such a well-preserved environment as this.
Situated in the Golden Circle region, which is the most popular in the country due to its concentration of important natural treasures, the Ion Hotel is making its mark in Iceland as a pioneer of sustainable tourism. Concerned about creating a place that was kind to the environment, Sigurlaug set her sights on a building that formerly belonged to the Nesjavellir geothermal power plant. A 20-room dormitory left abandoned for over 10 years, which had to be completely renovated and expanded upon in order to give it an eco-facelift. How do you create an eco-friendly hotel with an amazing design in a protected area from an old industrial building? How do you use geothermal power to meet its energy needs? And what partnerships do you have to put in place to involve the local people in the project? Guided by all these questions, Sigurlaug endeavored to create a new tourist attraction in sync with the environment that surrounds it.
There were neither hotels nor restaurants in this region. So we said to ourselves that we needed to bring some life to this area that is so appreciated by Icelanders and tourists. It would also give people the possibility of being able to sleep in the pearl of nature we have here.
To make her project a reality, she called on Urla and Tryggvi, two childhood friends who are now architects. They moved to the US a few years ago, but still work regularly in their home country, a little closer to nature.
What I knew about their work is that they're very careful in their ecological approach regarding the choice of materials and the way they structure the space in such a way that allows air to circulate without air conditioning. What's more, they're very clever at using already existing spaces. I knew that their vision corresponded to our wishes and that they knew how to realize beautiful constructions.
The location of this project, it's kind of in a really sensible area in the middle of a lava field, also in UNESCO National Park. And one of the issues, of course, we want to, interrupt as less as possible during the construction of this. And the easiest way to do that is try to build as most of it as offsite as possible and kind of have just assembly going on the side, and which we think we were, pretty successful to do.
That building, we wanted to blend into the nature, and we took, like you see, the roof come down like a lava on the sides, and kind of hold on to the new building that is coming and built with a new technique and the new parts. And underneath we have the pillars where the pool is, and we wanted also to have the building be part of the nature and history and have a story to tell.
And the building is concrete. Concrete is pretty easily available in Iceland, and the new technique we used in this concrete is it's insulated concrete panels. So basically it's 2 layers of concrete sandwiched in between with insulation. And what that allows us to do is to eliminate the layers of finishing the building. So we can allow a building to be exposed concrete on the outside, and at the same time we can do that same on the inside.
A mix of unfinished concrete, steel, and glass, the number of materials used on the hotel was kept to a minimum, with the goal of reducing its overall environmental impact. Thanks to its reinforced insulation, the building has great heat retention, which is essential in winter to optimize the heat that is produced, not letting it go to waste. As well as creating a hotel that was in harmony with its surroundings, the owner wanted to offer her clients a unique experience based on the country's heritage and strayed away from the standard holiday accommodation you find all over the world.
Personally, I always told myself that the day I went into the hotel business, I would link the experience to Iceland, to Iceland's nature, to Iceland's art, to the music of Iceland. Well, to everything that constitutes our identity. On all the trips I've been on, and there have been many of them, I've traveled to Africa, Asia, India, and South America. My strongest experiences were when I had the occasion to discover the local culture, traditions, and customs.
Katrine Osk joined the Eon team when it opened 3 years ago. She started off as the head of marketing and now holds the key job of general manager and knows all the ecological features of the hotel, down to even the smallest detail.
We are in one of the hotel's deluxe suites. Nature plays an essential role in the room. You've got this wall, for example, that depicts the lava that surrounds us and allows our clients to feel linked to our environment. The sheets, towels, all of the linen we use are bio-cotton. We have blankets made of Icelandic sheep's wool so that our clients can keep warm in winter. We are in the Nesjavalier zone, a region where the water is protected. It is one of the key places that provide Reykjavik with hot water, and we also use this water in the hotel. Everything we do is thought up and organized around the idea of protecting nature and saving water. Before returning to the ground, the water is filtered in 3 stages by 3 different filters and leaves as clean as when it arrived. This recycling is essential because we know that the water will be used again in a few years.
Thanks to geothermal power, the Ion also benefits from a 100% green energy supply, which provides its 45 rooms with hot water, heating, and electricity. All of the energy used by the hotel is produced naturally by the neighboring power plant.
Here, we are in the lava spa. The water springs directly from the earth. Lining the bottom of the jacuzzi are tiles made of Icelandic lava. Everything is natural, no chlorine, no added products. Just natural hot water that contains a kind of foam that releases vitamins that are beneficial for the human body. It's like being in a hot water spring in the middle of nature. All you have to do is enjoy.
I love the hotel. I think the design is amazing, and this, like I said, this is why I wanted to come here. So, it's just beautiful. It's very modern and unique. Very, very cool. I like it a lot. It's absolutely amazing. Going from glaciers to lava fields to waterfalls and everything.
You don't see that where we're from, so
No.
just experiencing that here, just that alone, is just incredible. Just beautiful, yeah.
Here we are in the Aurora Borealis bar that we often call the Diamond. You can enjoy a view of the surrounding mountains all the way to Lake Thingvallavatn. Behind the energy plant is the Hengil volcano. It's not active, but it does provide us with all the heat and energy we require. So we go directly from nature to the hotel.
From the end of September until mid-March, the bar with its glass walls is the perfect place to sit and admire the Northern Lights, one of the world's most incredible natural spectacles. As for the decoration, the same ecological philosophy applies. Erla and Tryggvi, the two architects, thoughtfully designed custom-made furniture using local resources, strengthening the ever-present link between the hotel and its environment.
These are custom made, locally made. And you mean bars, of course, everything is custom, custom designed and built. And you look at like these bars, tables are done to create, really thin to make these as less visible. So if you're sitting in this area, you can see through everywhere. Kind of cheating a little bit when you have the opportunity to design something in this area. You just put glass, and and some nice furniture.
Nice architecture, like Icelandic nature,
Like
rough and real.
Rough and real.
If you look outside, it's beautiful.
It's impressive, huh?
It's very impressive. It's now raining, but then it's still impressive. Yeah. And also the rooms are very...
Yes, and I like the way, they have eye for all the details. And everything is perfectly coordinated and styled. And, it's the feeling is very warm. It's kind of industrial, but it doesn't stand out in the surroundings. And I like the way you can see that people thought about it. They realized that in this place, to put a hotel in this size, you have to be careful. That's not going to be rude or something, or it's going to be overwhelming or ugly.
A decidedly extraordinary destination, Iceland, situated at the gateway to the Arctic Circle, also enjoys surprising natural phenomena such as midnight sun. At this latitude, the sun doesn't set for 2 months of the year, over June and July.
Most people that visit Iceland do so because of its nature, its incomparable environment, and because of its purity. I believe that we who work in the tourist trade have a great responsibility in this respect. The tourist trade is still very young in our country, and we must see it in the light of preserving the purity that characterizes us, not only for the next 10 years, but for the next 100 or 200 years.
Nestled in the heart of spectacular natural landscapes between ancestral lands and volcanic mountains, the Ion Hotel, with its truly contemporary approach, is the first eco-design establishment on an island that is opening up to more and more tourists from all over the world. The next stop on our world tour of beautiful design is across the Atlantic Ocean. We're here in Tijuana, Mexico, where the Lopez family has built an astonishing ecological house without having to compromise on comfort or design. We've come to the city of Tijuana in Mexico to discover a house unlike any other that is providing answers to the environmental problems of tomorrow. This border town has been facing two environmental problems recently. One of which is to do with its main supply of running water, which comes from the Colorado River in the United States. Water which has to be transported hundreds of kilometers, which requires a high amount of both money and energy. The second is that in Tijuana, recycling is far from a priority. On average, 1,800 tons of waste are generated each day, only half of which will be sent to landfills, while the other half will be released into the environment. This is why Javier and Marta decided to settle here to build their eco-friendly house, a project that was based on the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle.
The inhabitants of our region think that just by installing solar panels on their roof, they're ecological. Wrong. It's a good start, sure, because it lowers the carbon imprint in the atmosphere. But being eco entails that one behaves in a certain manner and respects the world that surrounds us.
How do you repurpose materials that most people would consider as waste to build a unique home? How do you solve water supply issues in a city with a semi-arid climate? And how do you use natural resources to limit their impact on the environment? Javier and his wife built their home based on these questions.
In order to build the house, we followed 3 environmental guidelines. First, zero electricity consumption, generate electricity using photovoltaics, so we installed solar panels. Second, reuse the water. We live in a city that is poor in water, and to reuse water was for us of primary importance. Third, build using recycled materials.
Even though Javier and Marta viewed ecology as a priority when they set out on this project, meeting architect Omar Bernal Munoz helped them strengthen this ideology.
Inicialmente, cuando conocí a Javier,
when I met Javier for the first time, we agreed on one point: to have the least effect possible on the earth, and to come up with a sustainable project. That was our watchword from the onset.
Another essential consideration when building the house was the element of comfort.
It's here, in the dining room, that we underlined an element of major importance in the design of the house: Light. Light is very important for one's morale. When you look at this light, these rays of sunlight, as they brighten up the area behind me and in front, you get a sense of amplitude. You feel like you're in a vast space.
The architect chose to enhance this feeling of well-being by opening up the space as much as possible and by playing with different ceiling heights. Exposure and openings to the outside are the focal point of this construction. They were carefully planned in order to reap the most benefit from the natural resources.
The house's orientation allows us to get more out of the sun, and this prompted us to install a photovoltaic system to stock up on electricity. For the greater part of the day, the house's southern facade is the one that gets more sunlight, ultraviolet and infrared, so we decided to bore small windows in the sole aim of letting in more light. We didn't want the ultraviolet or infrared rays to penetrate into the house.
Each window was strategically placed along the facades, minimizing the need for artificial light during the day. And this energy-efficient house has allowed the family to reduce its energy consumption to zero. In fact, around 1,600 watts of solar energy are generated per hour, which more than covers the around 700 watts used by the entire house in the same amount of time. Using passive construction techniques, the architect opted for natural ventilation. In order to better optimize this ventilation, Omar added a second wooden structure that surrounds the exterior of the building.
We covered the facade along its entire upper area. We call this an envelope. It's a bit like a second skin that envelops the building, and it acts as a mediator between the outside and the inside of the house. There is a separation between the envelope and the building's main structure, an empty space where air currents form. This cools down the rooms and, in the case of this house, the entire interior.
La habitación, ¿no? o en este caso los interiores. Las rejillas que vemos de metal.
The metal grids that you see function as fans.
Captadores de viento, el cual permiten la accesibilidad del
They
viento.
capture the wind, allow it to circulate between the structure and the envelope, and to exit from other points in the building.
Vuelve a salir, ¿no? Por otros puntos.
Without this kind of ventilation system, the hot and cold air would be trapped in the empty space.
Que se encerrara el calor o el frío en el vacío, ¿no?
That would give rise to much higher temperatures inside.
Climática muy diferente en el interior.
This natural ventilation system is enhanced in the garden by a wooden fence. It channels the wind and redirects it around the house, optimizing the temperature inside the house.
Yo me siento muy libre en la casa.
I feel free in this house. There is a space dedicated for every kind of activity. In our old house, for example, everything went on in a single space. Anything and everything all at once. But here, you could move around more freely.
In Tijuana, cinder blocks tend to be used as the main construction material. The architect chose an alternative solution that is gentler on the environment for Javier and Marta's home. This is why 40% of the materials used to build the home are recycled. From the house's structure to the decorative elements within, like the metal doors, the library, or even the wooden dining room table.
Personally, I don't care for all that decoration stuff, luxury and flourish. If you can recycle what you don't throw into the garbage can, well, then you should hang on to it. Give it a second life.
On the second floor, Javier, Marta, and the architect opted for a surprising material.
We're on the second floor of the house. What's important here is the material that we used for the floor. Instead of using a hard material, we opted for recycled material, cork. It's important not to ruin one's backbone when one walks. Another thing is that it's an excellent means of controlling the temperature.
By giving this waste a second life, Javier and Marta managed to reduce their construction costs by 35%. This way, the materials don't pollute the surrounding environment, which is already suffering. What's more is that the city of Tijuana is located in a semi-arid region where there are no rivers or lakes and where it rarely rains. The closest water source is the Colorado River in the United States. Therefore, water has to be carried hundreds of kilometers, which poses problems both in terms of money and energy. In order to overcome this environmental obstacle, Javier has installed a water treatment system in his home.
This is our water treatment system. We only recuperate the so-called gray waters, rainwater, and the water we use for cleaning and washing. In this system, there are volcanic rocks that act as filters. This allows us to purify the water. This is a volcanic rock. As you can see, this volcanic rock is porous, and so the water flows through the various compounds and comes out filtered. This rock will be colonized by living organisms found in the air and in the water. The organisms already present in the rock are the ones that cause degeneration, because they are already adapted, and they will go on to degrade their own compounds. It's a system that, because of its simplicity, can easily be copied and adapted to other homes, if there's enough room, and if they desire to do so. Once the water arrives here, this machine will function as a sedimentation device. So just what is a sedimentation device? You've got to get the dirt or mud to stay on the bottom. Then you can reuse this water with the help of this pump. The water flows through this component that removes all odors. We can then use the water to water the garden or for the toilets.
Everything is connected. The plants we chose were chosen on the basis of their water consumption. I'd say that half of these plants don't consume a lot of water. And to water the other half, we use recycled water. So we use very little water for that.
As pioneers of sustainable construction in Tijuana, Javier and Marta also seek to educate those around them about environmental protection.
To me, it's important to reuse water, wood, everything we have around the house. I feel like I'm helping the planet. Ever since I was little, that's how I saw things. I always enjoyed recycling bottles or even a sheet of paper. And today I want to do more. I don't want to limit myself to a sheet of paper. I'm very fortunate, and I'm proud of that.
What I think of this house, this system, I think it's a good idea and that we should all take it as an example to reduce our impact on the planet and to optimize the resources that are at our disposition and that we ruin every day in a crazy way. If we could just make a little effort, we could succeed in preserving our planet.
Yes, I think that the way we're using recycled materials will have a positive impact on the society we live in. We believe that doing so in this region will, and this we hope, have a snowball effect, cause a human chain reaction of people who will continue improving what we've done here. This would be a very positive thing.
By reclaiming waste that is often underutilized, this family has opted for an alternative that is much kinder to our planet. And without compromising on design, this concept of a house built from recycled materials sets an example for the housing of tomorrow. In a sea of more conventional houses which often consume a lot more energy, Omar, Javier, and Marta have succeeded in proving that even in their country, it is possible to build in a more environmentally friendly way.